Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to build on some of the questions that Chairman DeFazio began with. And I want to start with you, Mr. Alexi. Would you acknowledge, and let me just make this very basic, would you acknowledge that there is a relationship between the length of a train and how long people are going to be waiting at a railroad crossing?
Unfortunately, we don't have any data to support that. We know that the block crossings happen, but the information that comes with any block crossing reports.
I'm sorry, I'm a little confused. This seems to be like first grade arithmetic here. The longer the train, the longer people are going to be waiting for that train to clear a crossing. Is that not correct?
That, as far as if that train is moving, yes, it will take longer for that train to clear a crossing.
Thank you. And this would include first responders who may be stuck waiting 3, 5, 10 minutes, depending, again, on the length of the train. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
And the longer the train, if it has to stop for whatever reason, the greater the chance that it will be blocking a crossing, especially in a populated area where there are more crossings.
That's correct.
And yet it is the position of the FRA that decisions about the length of trains should be left entirely to the industry. Is that still your position? That you hope that they take safety into account, but that there should be no regulations here on a national level?
Yes, I believe that the railroads need to identify their, through their understanding of their operations, make those decisions.
And you believe that the railroads at the freight railway industry will make those decisions with safety as their primary consideration, even given the strong economic incentives that they face to build longer and longer trains? You trust them to do that?
Yes, I believe that, there's new rulemakings coming out for risk reduction and system safety, and railroads are going to be required to look at the risk associated with the train length.
They'll be required to look at the risk, but they get to make the decision however they want. As long as they've told you they've looked at the risk, you will be satisfied.
They're going to have to adjust their operations to address that risk that's been identified.
And what about crew size? We're seeing pressure on the industry to cut crew size, in some cases, to 1 crew member per train. Imagine a 3-mile-long train with 1 crew member. I had an exchange with Mr. Batory on this issue. I asked him, if such a train were stopped because of an accident, how long would it take the single crew member to walk from the front to the back of the train? And he memorably replied to me, well, maybe a couple of hours, but depends on whether he's a good walker or not. Got to say, that didn't build my confidence. Don't you? We heard from Mr. O'Shea about the importance of cutting trains under those circumstances. Don't you think having a second crew member might be helpful in terms of very rapidly cutting a train so that first responders and others can get through?
That's a good question. When you look at, not necessarily. I would say that the time it takes to cut a train is considerable, and given the data that we have on the time that crossings are blocked, you may even exacerbate the problem by sending someone back there and do all the things they have to secure the train that you're cutting away from. So it could create more problems in the long run.
Makes very little sense to me. It would seem that having more than 1 crew person would make it easier to perform those kinds of functions. Mr. Morris, if I could ask you, we saw an industry white paper recently that stated that one of the reasons blocked crossings occur is when trains are being held to change operating crews in order to prevent hours of service violations. And I was curious, with the implementation of precision scheduled railroading, which railroad schedules are much more precise, how can it be that operating crews would be scheduled to time out just as they arrive at a crossing? Wouldn't you be able to avoid that?
And that's a great question, Congressman. I think one answer is that Norfolk Southern has about 24,000 grade crossings, just ourselves. So that's an average of more than 1 crossing per mile. So the sheer number of crossings presents a little bit of a challenge. And that's another great point that you made in terms of the scheduled railroading. We hear a lot kind of about downsides. I would think that is one improvement of knowing where people are supposed to be, when they need to be there, what they're going to do. That's why it will be helpful as we get more information to look at the baseline impacts.
Thank you. I yield back.